is John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31. Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. Let me pause there for just a second. Interestingly enough, most of the signs that he does here are not at all in the other books, because John has a very specific purpose. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. He has a very specific purpose in what he wants to do. What's really interesting, and this is a sidelight, and I just tell you for what it's worth, what's very interesting to me about it is he could have put in all of the passages, all of the things that Jesus did with just the three, Peter, James, and John. He was included in a very intimate circle with Jesus, and he got to do many things that the others didn't get to do, like for instance, when the transfiguration happened, when Jesus went up the hill and he took those three with him, or in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he moved those three apart from the rest, they all fell asleep anyway. But he could have told many times that Jesus showed him favor, and none of those are in the book of John. None of those. All those are for the other Gospels. He had a purpose for the book of John, and it was this, in verse 31. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. All right, today's about life. Most of us want to live the opposite of what I've been doing for the last 10 minutes. I've been dying. Not really. But we do want to feel alive, don't we? We love to feel alive. And we have strategies for feeling alive. We don't like sadness. We don't like gloom. We don't like death. We don't like suffering. We want to live. We want to live. And so people pour themselves into all kinds of life-giving strategies or trying to feel alive. I saw this TED Talk this week where in 2017 they interviewed Elon Musk. I don't know if you know who Elon Musk is. You know the Tesla Motors, and he's a big entrepreneur. And I read in the newspaper that he made this year more than 65 CEOs together. He earned $2.3 billion this year. So it's obviously very profitable for him to be an entrepreneur. But they were asking him questions about what he's thinking, and he really does have a mind that's out there. And he's got a very clear mind. And he was talking about technology, and he was talking about they have an idea for putting underground highways to lighten up the congestion in cities. And where you have levels of tunnels, he says you can dig down as far as you want, way further down than putting high-rise bridges and things. And they would put them on these cars. And it was really cool what he did, and he had a video to show it. He was talking about the future of Tesla Motors and the cool technological things that they're doing. He talked about building on Mars. He has an idea to go to Mars and these kinds of things. But what was most interesting, what came at the end of the interview, where they asked him the reason that he was doing all of this. And this is what he said: I'm not trying to be anyone's savior. I'm just trying to think about the future and not be sad. That's a simple statement. Just think about the future and not be sad. He's doing all this so he can feel alive. Otherwise, if you don't feel alive, the sadness will settle in. That's what we do, don't we? Most of the way that people try to be alive the reason they want to be alive is to avoid the inevitability of old age, rickety joints, a bit of a bulge, sickness, and eventually death, right? That's what's on the docket. Don't mean to be depressive here, but that's what's on the docket for all of us. All of us. Sooner or later. But eventually we need to think about those things. We all have these strategies. Jack Nicholson, the great theologian, says, I used to live so freely The mantra for my generation was, be your own man. I always said, hey, you can have whatever rules you want. I'm going to have mine. I'll accept the guilt. I'll pay the check. I'll do the time. I chose my own way. That was my philosophical position well into my 50s. As I've gotten older, I've had to adjust. And here's his adjustment. We all want to go on forever, don't we? We fear the unknown. Everybody goes to that wall, yet nobody knows what's on the other side. That's why we fear death. So where do you go to feel alive? What are your feeling alive strategies? Well, there's all kinds of them, right? There are all kinds of them. One of the ways we do, I talking to my brother, Brad, he's a doctor, and he listens to these, I think. I'm not sure why. I think I've duped him as well. But he's funny because he doesn't want to give up on his youth. Well, he turned 60 this year, and that's really, really old. You know, I'm only a year behind him. He's already, all right. He doesn't want to give up on his youth. The guy exercises like nobody's business. I mean, he runs and he does. I mean, it's unbelievable. He can run circles around me, but it's cool. I mean, it's cool to stay in shape. But some people just want to stay young. I wanted you to see this video that I put up for you of a commercial. If you drink this water, you will stay young. But you get the idea, right? People want to stay young, and the end of it is the Evian water. Think young, it says. Think young. People love being young or thinking about being young. Youth is very valued in our culture. There are many other feeling alive strategies. For me, it's usually food. It's just, you get really excited for a meal. And then if you've seen The King of Queens, Doug Heffernan, when he gets to the bottom of a cup of pudding, he feels really sad because it's at the end. And then his wife says, get another one. Oh yeah, I'll get another one. And he gets all excited, and then he gets to the end of the other one, and he's all sad. Well, that's a portrait of my life, right? Some people like to go to the movies or watch TV or engage in entertainment of any kind. We want to feel alive. Others feel alive with certain friends or with a significant other, a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Others feel alive in much more destructive ways, some with pornography or sexual encounters or drugs or alcohol or many other things. There are all kinds of strategies that we use to feel alive, to feel better about ourselves, about life, and all these things. But what we have in our passage is what God tells us about feeling alive, about being alive. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. So the biblical view of life includes, it's very all-encompassing. It includes the physical functions of people and animal and plants. And we have that in Genesis where it says that God breathed life into Adam, so he gave him physical life. But of course it goes way beyond just physical life. It also encompasses the spiritual. And that's what we really have here, is a reference to more than physical life. But he gives us this idea that Jesus will give us life. It's not just that we'll feel better in our physical lives, but he gives us spiritual life. If we look at what the Apostle Paul says about life, it's such an interesting verse, and I use this a lot when I preach at funerals. But this is 2 Corinthians 5:4, and it says this: "For while we are still in this tent," what he means is our bodies, while we're still in our bodies, we groan, being burdened. Not that we would be unclothed, but that we would be further clothed, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. What he's saying is that when this life ends, we will be swallowed up by life, by real life. It's such an amazing verse. it's mind-boggling when you just sit and ponder what Paul means by that. See, I think that nothing will compare for those who will live with Jesus after they die. Swallowed up by life. It's powerful. And it's the life that John is referring to here. And Jesus says as much, right? Jesus says it way back in John 10. You remember he's talking about the sheep and the shepherd. Then he says this, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So what does he mean by abundant life? Well, I come back to the passage that we're looking at. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ. What is the key to abundant life? These are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ. The key is Jesus, of course. The key is Jesus. So he's calling him the Son of God and he's calling him Messiah. These are two concepts. He is God himself in human form. And this is one of the purposes of the book. And I'm going to point out many of the places where he actually points that out. And he's also Messiah, the one that would come to save his people. So I think it's worth taking just a teeny parenthesis here to talk about who John was writing to. So more than likely, he's writing to Gentiles in and around Ephesus. Of course, this applies to all of us as well, but he lived in Ephesus for many, many years. And most likely, the reason for writing the gospel, it was the very last of the four to be written. So he was assuming probably that all of his readers had read the other three, but his reason for writing was to combat a heretic named Cerinthus. And Cerinthus was teaching a gospel about Jesus, that Jesus, the man, was fully only human, but that the Messiah had come on him at his baptism and then left him at the cross. So Jesus himself was just a man. He was not God at all. And so this was a doctrine that was prevalent at the time. And some of these Gentiles might have been drifting off and believing these things. And so John is writing a gospel to show them that that is not true, that Jesus is fully God. John is adamant about it. He's adamant about it. So look at this list. And I got this from one of the commentators, William Hendrickson. It was just easier to copy and paste than to go through it all myself, because I only work on Sunday mornings, right? So here we go. Way back in chapter 2, the wedding of Cana, you remember that, where he manifested his glory and where he changed the water to wine, and the disciples believed in him. Chapter 3, the conversation with Nicodemus, who was a Pharisee. And this is where we get these famous passages. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever should believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life. God sent his Son, the two, he's God. The chapter 4, the conversation with the Samaritan woman. And the woman said to him, I know the Messiah is coming, he that is called Christ. When he arrives, he will declare everything to us. And Jesus said to her, I, the one who is talking to you, am he. That's chapter 4. Chapter 5, the healing of the man at Bethsaida and the discourse that follows that. He says, my Father is working until now, and I too am working. He's calling God his Father, and this is in the passage, and he's making himself, everybody was saying he's making himself equal with God. He did not deny that, and John includes that because that's what he's trying to portray. And then in chapter 6, the feeding of the 5,000. Now this is in all the Gospels, but the discourse that follows the feeding of the 5,000 is not in all the Gospels. It's only in the book of John. And he tells everyone, he says that everyone who beholds the Son and believes in him should have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last day. And then in chapter 7, where he does this discourse of the living water delivered at the Feast of Tabernacles. If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture says, from within him shall flow rivers of living water. And then chapter 8, and this is such a glorious chapter, where he says, where he talks about, it's the discourse regarding Abraham's seed. If therefore the Son shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. Who of you convicts me of sin? I most solemnly say to you, if a man keep my word, he shall never see death. And that's the chapter that ends with, before Abraham was, I am. I am, using the same words that were used for God in the burning bush. I'm almost done, so hang in there with me. This is good. If any of you want to get ordained, these are the things they look for. You got to go chapter by chapter and just work it through, okay? Here's chapter 9, the cure of the man born blind. And it said, and he worshiped him. He worshiped him. Chapter 10, the discourse about the good shepherd. I and the Father are one. Chapter 11, the raising of Lazarus, where he says, Jesus said to her, did I not promise you that if you would believe in me, you should see the glory of God? And he says, I am the resurrection. I am the life. Here in I don't have one for chapter 12. Chapter 13, the washing of the disciples' feet. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things in his hands and that he had come from God and was going back to God. And then we have that upper room discourse in chapters 14 and 17. I'm the way and the truth and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. And this is eternal life, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. And now, Father, glorify me in your own presence. And then we end up with Thomas saying, my Lord and my God. It's everywhere. Life comes through Jesus Christ, who is God in the flesh. He is God himself in the flesh. So what does this have to do with life? He's saying that if you want to have life, it's only found in him. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. He's the very definition of life. It's not that we go ask him for life and he doles out some life. It's that he is the life. He's the definition of it. He is the one who embodies life. And it is coming to him in relationship with him that we get life. This means that we can't find life in our circumstances, and we can't find life in our employment, and we can't find life in our wealth or in our significant other or in our children or in our leisure activities or in the food we eat or in the amount of likes we get on social media. And certainly it's not found in pornography or sex or drugs or alcohol. See, life is found in Jesus. He's the essence, the source, and the definition of life. And the life that he offers lasts forever. And when we come to him, he gives us life. I don't know if I can make that any more clear. So if he is the one that gives us life, why is it so hard to be with him? Why is it that we can think of 80,000 other things to do before we'll spend time with him? Some of you are very disciplined. I'm not talking to you. We won't see you in heaven. You'll be too close to the throne. We'll be too far on the outskirts. But for the rest of you, why is it so hard for us to come to Jesus? If he is, you can't, this is like a baseball bat to the head of showing us that Jesus is the life. It's over and over and over and over and over in the scriptures. Why is that? Well, here it is. Here's why. Because our feel alive strategies give us instant gratification. They give us what we want now. The life that Jesus offers is a process. It's a pursuing him and his speaking to us through his word and our speaking to him. It's building relationship. When you first start dating somebody, you don't know them well. You don't know them well. And so there could be awkwardness. There could be all kinds of things. But I've been married to my wife for 36 years. Silence is good. I mean, we talk too, but it's not awkward if there's silence, right? It's not awkward because we're not worried about figuring it out, right? Well, this is relationship. It's a slow-moving process, but the further you get along, the more life it breathes into your soul. But these self-gratification strategies only bring death. They don't fulfill. They last. In my Overeaters Anonymous, which I've told you I go to, and they talk about the 8-second thing, where you put that bite in your mouth and it's gone in 8 seconds. That was it. Whee! It was really fun for 8 seconds, right? Then you got to have another bite, and another one, and another one, and another one. And all of those feeling alive strategies are like that. Some of them take a little bit longer, but we put so much emphasis on that because we're trying to feel something. We're trying to feel alive. And so we want it now because we're the instant generation. We got to have it right this minute. And it's deadly because it leaves us worse at the end than it did at the beginning because it never delivers. It promises so much. It feels so good. This is how affairs happen. It feels so good, but it ends in death with destruction to relationships, to kids, to you name it. It destroys. Because this is what we do. This is how we engage. This is the kind of thing we do all the time. We look for these life-giving strategies. It's such a dead end. So where can we find the life that lasts? It's in Jesus. Early in his career, the great American playwright Eugene O'Neill wrote a play about Lazarus. It says, the name of it is Lazarus Laughed. And it's about Lazarus' life after Jesus raised him from the dead. So near the beginning of the play, guests from Bethany are gathering for a banquet in Lazarus' honor, and they're all desperate to hear what Lazarus has to say about his experience. And as they take their seats, one of the guests says, "The whole look of his face has changed. He's like a stranger from a far land. There's no longer any sorrow in his eyes. They must have forgotten sorrow in the grave." And another guest, one who had helped roll the tombstone aside, recalls the scene after Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead in even more beautiful terms. And then Lazarus knelt and kissed Jesus' feet, and both of them smiled. And Jesus blessed him and called him my brother. And he went away. And Lazarus, looking after him, began to laugh softly, like a man in love with God. Such a laugh I never heard. It made my ears drunk. It was like wine. And though I was half dead with fright, I found myself laughing too. That's life. That's the life that Jesus gives. It's the life that Jesus promises. It's the life that propelled John to follow him for those 90 plus years through much persecution. It's the life that every one of those disciples got and went to their deaths proclaiming as martyrs. It's that life that keeps going and only gets better after we die. It gets way better than that after we die. So how do we get it? We believe. These are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ. The real translation here is continue to believe. Remember, he's writing this to people against a heretic. And he wants them to continue to believe that Jesus actually is the Christ, is God himself. Maybe some of you have gotten off on your life-giving strategies, and maybe this is for you. You need to continue to believe that Jesus is the only source of life. He's the only one that can give you what you need in your heart. He is the source. Maybe you need to continue to believe that. Or maybe you need to believe in Jesus for the first time. Maybe you've never believed in him. Maybe you're a skeptic about these things. That's perfectly fine. Keep investigating. Keep looking for it. We really just have two paths, right? We have the paths of getting life wherever we can, trying to feel good about life, and getting it here and getting it there, wherever we can find it. But it always ends, and we got to find it again and again and again and again. It reminds me of being a musician. You live for the gig, and when the gig's over, you can live in the glow of it for that evening. But by the next morning, you're ready to do it again. You need to get your fix again. You need to play again. You need to play again. You need to play again. So we can go down that path, but I promise you that path ends in darkness and death. Or we can go down the path and say, I believe that Jesus is the Christ, that he came and he died for me. He took my sins, and I don't get what all that means right now, but I want to pursue him. I want to know him. I want to have this relationship with him. It's the only thing that can really give me life. And then we won't have to be like Elon Musk and say that we do all these things so we don't have to be sad about the future. In fact, I shared this 2 weeks ago, and it's one of my favorite lines in all the world from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. In fact, the future isn't sad at all, because everything sad will come untrue, right? Everything sad will come untrue. And then will come the joy and the laughter and the belly laugh. I love the vision. I've told people that were really struggling before. And I've told them, one day we're going to be there together. And I'm going to go find you. I'm going to go find you. And I'm going to give you the biggest hug you've ever gotten. And we are going to laugh. And we're going to belly laugh. And we're going to say, we made it. We're here, and we're going to enjoy it and have fun and laugh our brains out. That's life. Do you want life? It's only in Jesus. That's the gospel. It changes everything. Let's pray.